This is Deepak Chitruk from the Unique Academy, and today we'll be discussing the questions with regard to economy and current affairs, most of which are scattered. The other questions have been discussed earlier by other previous faculty members, so we'll be discussing all the questions which have been omitted earlier. Coming to question number 3, starting with question number 3, the Global Competitiveness Report is published by. This is a very straightforward question. The answer is World Economic Forum. Now, coming to the next question, most of the other questions are history. Question number 24 says, it's an economic question, conceptual question. In a given year in India, official poverty lines are higher in some states than in others because. Now see, when you're talking about the official poverty line, the methodology has been prepared by the center to calculate the poverty line. They will take into consideration the consumption expenditure on various number of activities such as food, education, health, etc. So basically, when you're considering these consumption expenditures, their prices might vary from state to state, and that is the reason why you might have a difference in official poverty lines in the different states when they are finally given out. So that justifies option B. When you come to option A, poverty rates vary from state to state. That is true. But poverty rates do not dictate the official poverty line. So that is a difference you need to notice. So statement B is the only one which will fit in the requirement that the question is asking, why the official poverty line is higher in some states than the others. That is basically due to the difference in consumption expenditure. Okay, if that is clear, then there's nothing to worry about in this answer. Now coming to question 32. Question 32 is also fairly straightforward science and technology related question. Which of the following, for the measurement or estimation of which of the following are satellite images or remote sensing data used? Now these days remote sensing data is used for a number of activities. So even when it comes to judging the chlorophyll level in plants, when the chlorophyll level is lesser to higher, when this happens to a whole community of plants, that can actually be sensed through remote sensing. The color will turn from one different band to the other different band, as simple as that. So greenhouse gas emissions is very much already being done. Land surface temperatures of a specific locations, that is the oldest use of remote sensing data. So basically 1, 2 and 3, all of them are true. Please do not get confused as to, option 1 might be false and then mark B. So the correct answer for this is D. Coming to question 37 is also fairly straightforward. Which one of the following is the largest exporter of rice in the world in the last 5 years? That is obviously India. India overtook Thailand as the largest exporter of rice way back in 2011-12, and since then India has been one of the most leading exporters of rice. Now coming to question 38, where they're asking which glacier is feeding which river. I think we have actually asked a similar type of question in our test series again. Coming to the Milam Glacier, which is marked incorrectly, the Bandarpanch Glacier feeds the Yamuna, the Barashigri feeds the Chenab, the Milam Glacier feeds the Goriganga River, and the Siachen Glacier, as we all know, feeds the Nubra. The Jammu Glacier feeds the Teesta River, not Manas in particular. So the correct answer option is A. Coming to question number 39. Now, in India, the use of carbofuran, methyl parathion, phorate, and triazophos is viewed with apprehension. These chemicals are used as. So basically, the Anupam Verma committee was set up to review the use of 66 pesticides that have been barred or restricted for use in farming in other countries. So when the committee finally reviewed all the pesticides in question, they came up with another list wherein triazophos was also a part of it and tricofluran was also a part of it. So basically these are pesticides used in agriculture, very obvious thing. Ramsar Convention and the wetlands conservation management rules that were recently put up in India. So statement 1 says under the Ramsar Convention, it is mandatory on the part of the government of India to protect and conserve all the wetlands in the territory. Now again, it is not a legally binding treaty, it is not mandatory for India to protect and conserve. But if you adopt the So it is not a legally binding treaty, which is the most important aspect. So it is not mandatory. So statement 1 becomes false. You can directly eliminate it. You are left with option B and C, wherein 3 is already true in these options. So all you have to check is whether statement 2 is true or not. Now when it comes to statement true, it says the wetlands rules were framed by the government of India based on the recommendations of the Ramsar Convention. Now by and large, whenever it comes to wetlands, Ramsar is one of the only conventions and one of the only leading treaties in this particular field. So when India finally framed the rules, it does not state explicitly that these rules are based on the recommendations, but obviously there is no other foundation apart from Ramsar Convention for the rules to be framed. In the last answer, B is the correct answer. So coming to question 41, consider the following statements again. Agricultural soils release nitrogen oxides into the environment. This is very obviously true. Cattle release ammonia into environment. Now this is a very interesting aspect because last year there was one drug approved by US FDA which will reduce the ammonia released by the cattle. So basically ammonia has a lot of side effects such as it can cause itches, burning sensations, etc, and especially in America where the beef industry is huge. They needed some type of ammonia inhibitor. So that's why they developed that product. That is why the statement has been put in your exam. Cattle releases ammonia into environment. Poultry industry releases reactive nitrogen compounds into the environment. Again, this leads to pollution in the environment as such, nitrogen pollution. Reactive nitrogen compounds will again form complex compounds in the future. And in India in particular, the poultry industry, as the poultry industry grows, the amount of pollution will also grow from them. So basically all of these statements are true. Options 1, 2 and 3. Coming to question 42, with us, what is common to the places known as Aliya, Isapur and Kangsabati? In all of these places there is water reservoirs which are found. These things have been in news basically because a lot of animals were found around the, I think, Isapur water reservoir. So forest officials have to prevent animals from creating scenes over there. Similar issue with regard to Aliya also. So that is why they were in news, and this is the type of question that has been framed on it. 44. Why are dewdrops not formed on a cloudy night? Now in order to analyze this question, let us just figure out first how does the heat come into the environment? It comes in from the sun in the form of shortwave radiation, and it is reflected back from the earth in the form of long wave radiation. Now clouds, you should know, are opaque to long wave radiation, so that heat remains trapped in the atmosphere. So especially at night, that is the most important aspect you need to remember, that clouds are opaque to long wave radiation, so that heat remains trapped. Now the second point you need to realize is, when are dewdrops formed? So dewdrops would require a type of temperature inversion to form, so that cold air is trapped at the bottom layers, basically because the ground gets cooled up faster at the night. So the layer above the ground of the layer of cold air that is directly present above the ground will also get cooled rapidly because it is in touch with the ground, and the layers of air that are above this cool layer of air will be a little more higher in temperature. So this creates a situation of temperature inversion, and then finally when you reach the dew point, that is when the dewdrops are formed. But if on a cloudy night the heat remains trapped, then this kind of then the ground will also be atmosphere will also be relatively heated up. So this kind of temperature inversion cannot occur in such a type of condition when the nights are cloudy. So that is why dewdrops are not formed. Coming to question number 51, particularly vulnerable tribal groups in India. So this is a question that we have been anticipating since the last 2-3 years. Officially, there are only 75 PVTGs have been declared. We have been reading that around 3 to 4 times in news articles every year. So, and in this particular question, there are 4 statements. But if you look at the options, the best part is that if you eliminate one statement, you are going to get the right answer. So you don't need to bother analyzing all the 4 statements. You just need to eliminate one statement. That's it. That is the key in this question. So if you are able to eliminate one statement, and if you know there are only 75 PVTGs that have been officially declared, then all the other statements will be automatically correct. So in this case, the statement 3 is wrong. The right option is C. Now coming to question number 54. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption. So again, statement 1 is false because they have just exchanged the statements of Convention Against Corruptions and Transnational Organization Crime. So statement 1 is supposed to be of Transnational Organization Crime. Statement 3 is supposed to be of Convention Against Corruption. They have just exchanged these two statements. So only statement 2 and 4 are correct. Statement 1 and 3 are totally wrong. So if you eliminate statement 1 and 3, you're left with statement C. Now again, when you're reading statement 2, UNCAC is the first ever legally binding global anti-corruption instrument. Completely true. But then again, it's a proper factual question, so I'm sure most of you would have got it right. Question number 55 first, and we'll take up questions as we go on. Okay, so question number 55 is the one related to the Indian Forest Act. So the first statement is, as per the recent amendment to the Indian Forest Act 1927, forest dwellers have the right to fell bamboos grown on forest areas. Now see, with reference to this statement, they have made a certain change in the particular act which eases the transit and felling restrictions for bamboo in private lands. But forest dwellers still do not have the right to fell bamboos grown on forest areas as per Indian Forest Act, because there are still some legal provisions which prohibit this. So the government officials are still eligible to take action in case of illegal felling. So this is something you would get it from the news. It's very much there in the news articles and everything. In around, I think, the May 2018 or so. So if you've gone through it, you should be able to get this right. The next thing that is very important for us is, see, the Forest Act was implemented just because the Indian Forest Act of 1927 exists. In order to counter that, we bought the Scheduled Tribes and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition Act. So, but this act too had a lot of number of drawbacks, wherein you bring in the Forest Rights Act for the benefit of the traditional dwellers, but in fact it does the opposite to them. It does not empower them. So basically they made a few changes to this particular act too, so that they turned bamboo into a minor forest produce. So see, even in the Indian Forest Act, they have removed the definition of bamboo from a tree. Bamboo is no longer a tree in the Indian Forest Act, because of which the tree felling becomes much more easier. They do not get involved in legal battles, or even they cannot be prosecuted as easily as they could be before. So the same thing is applicable to Forest Rights Act of 2006 also, wherein since they have made the felling much easy, since they have classified bamboo as a minor forest produce now, it becomes much more easier for the traditional dwellers to access these products from the forest and for them to have a feasible livelihood from this opportunity. Not just from the livelihood point of view, but for them to use it in their day-to-day lives also. So coming to the next question will be question number 57. Question number 57 is also a statement-based question, which we have asked several times in our test series. So according to the Indian Patents Act, it says a biological process to create a seed can be patented in India. Now, if you look at the paper, if you look at the statement 1 and statement 3, they are very much similar. So statement 1 is saying ki a biological process to create a seed can be patented in India. Statement 3 says plant varieties are not eligible to be patented in India. Now see, so basically once you get a different type of seed, you will get a different type of plant variety. So basically if you can get a patent on that seed, you can get a patent on the plant variety. So statement 1 and statement 3 go hand in hand. So basically if statement 1 is true, then statement 3 plant variety should be eligible to patent, should somewhat make sense. But Again, if you've gone through the news, Supreme Court has recently passed a judgment saying that plants, animals and seeds, varieties of these cannot be patented in the country. So that was a very important judgment. So if you just noted the judgment, you can just mark statement 1 and 3 as incorrect. So statement 3 would be correct. Plant varieties are not eligible to be patented in India. Statement 1 is incorrect. Biological process to create a seed cannot be patented in India. And if you come to statement 2 again, in India there is no intellectual property appellate board. Basically, we have appellate boards for most of the regulatory bodies and most of the regulatory agencies. So even this particular agency has an appellate board, okay, which was established in 1958. So the answer for this would be option number C, 3 only. So coming to question number 58, again an environment related question which is there in news. Environment Protection Act of 1986 empowers the government to state the requirement of public participation in the process of environmental protection. That is one part of the question. Lay down the standards for emission or discharge of environmental pollutants from various sources. That is the second statement. Now again, if you go through the second statement, lay down the standards for emission or discharge of environmental pollutants from various sources. They are already doing this in Bharat stage norms for the vehicles. The industrial pollutants already have norms established. And basically we are coming up with the established norms for city-based pollution also. So basically, statement number 2, since we are able to substantiate on our own to such an extent, it is, you can take it for granted that it is true. But statement number 1, when you come to statement number 1, state the Environment Protection Act can or empowers the government to state the requirement of public participation in the process of environmental protection and the procedure and manner in which it is sought. Now, this is a bit anti-democratic in its very expression, this particular statement. So from that perspective, you can right away mark it wrong. Or if you are still not convinced, if you still want more proof, then if you actually go to a reading of the Environmental Protection Act, it is nowhere mentioned about public participation, and that too enforcing public participation. So basically, state governments or even the central government, according to this act, has been given the power to implement any measure it sees fit in order to protect the environment. But at the same time, what this act does not say, it does not specify this particular statement as such. What it does say is, central government may have all the power to do whatever it needs to protect the environment. Now coming to question number 59, which deals with the Solid Waste Management Rules 2016, which were come up in India. Now it says, it is asking us which one of the following statements is correct. I think in our prelims paper, we had asked a very similar type of question. Very similar one. Waste generator has to segregate waste into 5 categories. So basically, waste is segregated into 3 categories, that is biodegradables, dry and domestic hazardous waste. But since the question says 5 categories, you can move on to the statement 2. The rules are applicable to notified urban local bodies, notified towns and all industrial townships only. Now, these rules are applicable even beyond the municipal limits. So, if you just notice one thing, that some of these rules are applicable to even hilly areas. So, there you can easily eliminate your statement number 2. The rules provide for exact and elaborate criteria for the identification of sites for landfills and waste processing facilities. Now, this is true. So, if you go through it, if you go through the waste management rules in detail, it will describe to you exactly what criteria needs to be followed in normal areas, in municipal areas, what criteria needs to be followed, in hilly areas, what criteria need to be followed. In different areas, different criteria are mentioned. So again, the criteria is like landfill site should be 100 meters away from a river or 200 meters away from a pond or 500 or 200 meters away from highways, habitations, etc. So these are the rules that provide for the exact and elaborate criteria for identification of sites for landfills and waste processing facilities. Now coming to the next question, service area approach was implemented under the purview of. So basically the RBI came up with one of the banking initiatives called the lead bank scheme way back in the 1980s. So when it implemented the lead bank scheme, basically a bank was supposed to give in a proposal for a certain number of village communities or for a particular district. So that particular bank would go to a rural area which was before unbanked, and then they would be the lead bank in that particular district. And once you take the lead initiatives, basically you're the sole provider of banking services in that particular area. So you have minimized competition on your end. So this was very beneficial for the banks which are looking to expand without being competed with. So a lot of PSUs would be interested in this. So this was the service area approach where the banks would determine what would be the area of their service. So that would be left roughly, let's say 15 to 20 villages, or let us say 1 or 2 districts. So it was a very small scale operation where they had to determine what would be their service area. Now coming to question number 62. With reference to the management of minor minerals in India, consider the following statements. Sand is a minor mineral according to the prevailing law in the country. So see, when you take sand into consideration, now earlier sand was classified as a major mineral. Now it is newly classified as a minor mineral. So for minor minerals in India, we have different laws. For major minerals in India, we have different laws. So when it comes to the major minerals, again, they are taken care of by the central government and they are auctioned off in blocks. When it comes to the minor minerals, it is at the sole discretion of the state government. So central government has minimal interference when it comes to minor minerals. So sand is one of the minor minerals according to the prevailing law. It has actually been changed. State governments have the power to grant mining licenses of minor minerals, but the powers regarding the formation of rules related to the grant of minor minerals lie with the central government. Yes. State governments have the power to frame rules to prevent illegal mining of minor minerals. So as I said, the state has a lot of independence. It has a lot of autonomy when deciding things with regard to minor minerals. So whether it is preventing its illegal exploitation or whether it is regarding the granting of mining licenses of minor minerals. So that is done by the state government. In case of major minerals, is done by the central government. But the power regarding the formation of rules related to the grant of minor minerals lie with the central government. That is also true. Okay, so coming to question number 63. There are 2 statements. The first of which says most of India's external debt is owned by government entities. Now you need to know one thing, that India has a total debt outstanding of around $520 billion or something like that. A little above $520 billion. Out of this, almost 38% or so is commercial borrowing. So roughly $200 billion in this is commercial borrowing. And still a major part of it is also NRI deposits. So NRI deposits is going to form almost $123 to $125 billion. So you can see roughly the government debt is, when it says most of India's debt is owned by governmental entities, that's not the case. Most of India's debt is owned by private entities. So coming to the second statement, all of India's external debt is denominated in US dollars. Now, obviously, you can mark this as a wrong statement right to begin with if you include the IMF SDR loans also. So basically, you don't even need to know what percentage is in US dollars. Right now, it is roughly around 48 to 49%. So, which is in US dollars. The rest of debt is in terms of IMF loans, multilateral loans, and the currency would be euros, Japanese yen. Oh yeah, and around 37 to 38 part of the debt is in terms of Indian rupee. Question number 64. Which of the following is not included in the assets of a commercial bank in India? Now see, when you are talking about the assets of a commercial bank, if you see the balance sheet of a company, it should show you what is mentioned under the assets and what is mentioned under the liabilities part. So under the assets part, whatever advances the bank is giving is of course obviously going to be a part of its assets. The investments of the banks are also an asset. Now the only doubt you would have is an option B and D, the deposits or the money at call and short notice. Now the money at call and short notice is nothing but the money that banks are lending to each other. There is a money at the call and short notice period. So after cash, the call money market is the second most liquid market for the banks. And that is of course an asset to them. So the deposits are of course listed on the liability side in the banking business because they have to obviously give back the deposits to the people at the end of the day. Now coming to question number 65, in the context of India, which of the following factors is or are contributor or contributors to reducing the risk of a currency crisis? So let us analyze this statement by statement. The first statement being the foreign currency earnings of India's IT sector. So we have to analyze if each and every statement is a contributor to reducing the risk of currency crisis. Okay. So when is a currency crisis going to occur? Basically when there is a shortfall in forex reserves, as it happened in India in 1990-91. So basically in around 91 we ran out of forex, and that was a currency crisis that India has faced. So around 96 and 97, Asia had again currency market crisis, which led to a currency crisis. So basically when you take up option when it says the foreign currency earnings of India's IT sector, that is going to bring in foreign inflow of funds, and that is going to actually earn us forex earnings. So that is going to stabilize the currency and not put it at risk. So let us come to the increase in government expenditure is going to lead to a direct rise in fiscal deficit. If the fiscal deficit keeps going on widening, then it could contribute to currency crisis. What we get from it is, it does not reduce the risk. It is going to increase the risk of a currency crisis, but it is no way going to reduce the risk. So this is how you satisfy the demand of the question. Remittances from India and abroad, again, forex coming in, really good for the economy. Okay, you can just mark it as true right away. So your only option that fits in 1 and 3. So the answer option is B. Going to question number 67. So if you know the definition of participatory notes, the question answers basically the question is the definition of participatory notes. Which of the following is issued by registered foreign portfolio investors to overseas investors who want to be a part of the Indian stock market without registering themselves directly with SEBI? The answer is participatory notes. So basically certificate deposits are unsecured promissory notes. Promissory notes are again commercial papers are again promissory notes issued by companies without any security. Promissory note is again a bill issued by the company saying it's a registered agreement between companies and different people. Certificate of deposits is another savings deposit which is given by companies. So this particular definition fits in participatory note directly. Coming to question number 68. Consider the following statements. The statement number 1 being, as per law, the compensatory afforestation fund management and planning authority exists at both national and state levels. This is true. Now coming to statement number 2. People's participation is mandatory in the compensatory afforestation programs carried out under the Compensatory Afforestation Fund of 2016. Now see, statement number 2 is very similar to the one we saw in the Environment Protection, question number 58, Environment Protection Act of 1986, where I said public participation cannot be made mandatory by the government. So in this particular statement also it says public participation, people's participation is mandatory in the CAMPA activities. So again, which is not true. So you've gone and read the whole act all over again. This is nowhere mentioned in the act. Coming to question number 70. With reference to India's 5-year plans, which of the following statements is or are correct? Now we've done a lot of research on this. From the second 5-year plan, there was a determined thrust towards substitution of basic and capital good industries. Yes, they were going in for a lot of import substitution of basic goods because they did not want to be reliant on imports. They wanted India to be a closed country. Basically, they wanted to rely on outside powers only for the technological. Statement 1 is correct. Statement 2, the fourth five-year plan adopted the objective of correcting the earlier trend of increased concentration of wealth and economic power. That is also true because we nationalized the banks. We bought in the MRTP Act, the Monopolistic and Restrictive Trade Practices Prohibition Act. Basically, the MRTP Act, its main aim of formation of the MRTP Act was to correcting the earlier trend of increased concentration of wealth in the hands of few people. So, when the MRTP Act came in, its main agenda was deconcentration of wealth. Now, in the fifth five-year plan, for the first time, the financial sector was included as an integral part of the program, part of the plan. Now, see, it says for the fifth five-year plan, the financial sector was included. Now, before this, the LIC was set up in, Life Insurance Corporation of India was set up way back, I think around 1958 or so. Now, if you're talking about the bank nationalization, it happened around the fourth plan period. So, there is a lot of evidence for us to say that before the fifth plan period, a lot of forward momentum was brought about in the financial sector. So, it's not necessarily true. They say, when they say that for the first time, the financial sector was a part of our plan, because financial sector has been a part of our planning from much more before that. So, again, in this particular statement, in question number 70, statement 3 is definitely false. So, it leaves you with A. Now, coming to question number 71, again, we have asked several questions with regard to Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank. AIIB has more than 80 member nations. Let us come back to this particular statement later. Because see, if you're trying to eliminate the options, it will be better for you to go through statement 2 and 3 first. India is the largest stakeholder in Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank. This is false because India is the second largest shareholder, China being the first largest. So, India has, okay, let us not go to the figures. But yeah, India is obviously not India is the second largest shareholder in AIIB. AIIB does not have any members from outside Asia. Of course, it has members from outside Asia. Canada and some of the Southeast Asian countries are also a part of it. So, non-regional members such as Belgium, Canada, Ethiopia, Hungary, Ireland, Peru, Sudan, Venezuela, all of these are a part of AIIB. So, even if you know just one of these countries, you can directly eliminate option 2 from the state thing. You're left with option A and C. All you need to do is figure out if option 3 is correct. If you remember even one of the country, you can mark A as your answer. Okay. So, coming to question 72, what is the purpose of the intercreditor agreement signed by Indian banks and financial institutes recently? So, intercreditor agreement, basically when, let us say you're a private institution with more than 100 CR in debt. So, when you're borrowing a large sum like 100 crore, you're going to borrow it from 2 to 3 entities. And when you're borrowing such large sums of money, it is very difficult for banks to keep individual tabs on you. But basically, if all the banks come together and they say we have lent them around 40 CR, we have lent them another 40 CR, another bank comes in, they say we have lent another 20 CR. So, all of these people are going to come together and they are going to take a concerted action on the company if ever they have to clear their dues. So, this was why the intercreditor agreement was signed. So, it aims at faster resolution of loans which are more than 50 CR, stress assets, stress loans basically, which are under consortium lending. Now, coming to question number 73, the chairman of PSB is selected by the, see, all the top posts are in PSB, especially the CEO and the chairman. They are these days nominated by the Bank Boards Bureau, and then the government takes a final call on it. So, the CEOs as well as the executive directors, they are all recommended by the Banks Board Bureau. So, this was much in news in 2017. Coming to question number 74 again. Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board is the first regulatory body set up by the Government of India. Obviously, this statement is false because a lot of regulatory bodies have been set up much previously. One of the tasks of PNGRB is to ensure competitive markets for gas. See, one of the tasks for any regulatory body in India is to ensure competition in their particular segment. Is to ensure fair market practices and competition. And see, the statement number 3 is quite tricky and quite difficult. Appeals against the decisions of the PNGRB go before the appellate tribunals for electricity. Now, this particular statement is true, but you will figure it out only if you go through a thorough reading of PNGRB, the Act itself. So, in the Act, it is mentioned that the appellate appeals will go to the Electricity Tribunal. So, statement 2 and 3 are true. So, you get option B as the answer. But see, the point is this particular question is very tricky. If you don't know the substance of it, you could easily go wrong. Now, coming to question number 75. With reference to communication technologies, what are the differences between long-term evolution and voice over long-term evolution technology? So, basically, the first statement says as the LTE is commonly marketed as 3G, but whereas we know the Reliance Jio formula where they use voice over LTE, it is popularly known as 4G. So basically what is voice only technology that most of the communication companies are trying to implement these days. Statement 2 is the only right answer. Coming to question number 76, which relates to the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act, again a topic which we have thoroughly covered. Even the last question also, I think we had covered it in our test series. So coming to the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act, statement number 1, pregnant women are entitled for 3 months pre-delivery and 3 months post-delivery leave, paid leave. See, if you go through the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act of 2017, it will say that it has extended the leave period from 12 weeks to 26 weeks. But it also says that before the delivery date, you can take leave only of 6 to 8 weeks. So that is roughly 1 to 1.5 months at most, 2 months at most. So since the question says 3 months pre-delivery, that is not applicable. You are only getting 6 to 8 weeks. So the first statement is false. So coming to second statement, it says that enterprises with creches must allow the mother minimum 6 creche visits daily. But whereas, again, this is they are going into very technical aspects of each and every bill or amendment. So in the statement 2, the mother can have a minimum of 4 visits. And in the statement 3, women with 2 children get reduced entitlements. That is true. So coming to the next question, 77. Which one of the following is not a sub-index of the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index? Now, in the Ease of Doing Business Index, there are around 10 sub-indices wherein they calculate the scores. So, in this, each of these indices related to the company. How easy is it for a company to pay its taxes? Or how easy is it for a company to register their property? How easy is it for a company to access electricity and water supply? So basically, maintenance of law and order is not at all related to the company in question, or it is not related to the ease of doing business, but it comes under governance. So statement option A, you can easily mark it as false. Now coming to question number 78, again a question which I have thoroughly asked you. Again question number 77 also we had asked several times in our test series. Extended producer responsibility, this was in news with reference to e-waste products, e-waste management and handling rules of 2011, wherein they said that for the very first time, the producer of these electronic goods, that is e-waste, had the responsibility of safely disposing them. This is called the extended producer responsibility. Now coming to the question number 79. The economic cost of food grains to the Food Corporation of India is the minimum support price and bonus paid to the farmers plus. Now, of course, the economic cost of food grains will include only the interest. Okay, basically the distribution cost, this, that, everything, transportation cost, everything has to be borne by the farmer himself. So, only if any interest is occurring, that the government will pay it back due to the delay in payments. So, coming to question number 80. In the context of any country, which one of the following would be considered as a part of its social capital? See, when you're talking about the human capital of a country, human capital refers to the demographic dividend, whereas social capital in any organization or in any country, which is again social capital, is for the very first time you're actually reading it in the paper, so it's very easy to get confused. So when you say you have a very trusted friend, that is your expression of social capital. When you say ki, yes, he will do my work at no matter the cost, that is, you're considering the social capital. That is the social capital that you have generated between the two entities. So in this particular question, there is only one option which fits in the criteria of social capital, the level of mutual trust and harmony in the society. Because at the end of the day, that trust is the most important aspect between people. And this is the most important aspect in a society also. The better trust you have among people, the better it is in all aspects. Now coming to question number 82. This is with regard to purchasing power parity. Statement 1 says purchasing power parity exchange rates are calculated by comparing the prices of the same basket of goods and services in different countries. Okay. Now, this particular statement says ki PPP exchange rates are calculated by this comparing the same basket of goods in different countries, which is true. But the only controversy over here with regard to this statement was that even if you compare the same basket of goods, let us say rice in India and rice in America. So rice is not the staple food in American industry. So the consumption of rice will be way lesser, and so the expenditure on rice of the American people is going to be much lesser as compared to the Indian people, for whom rice is one of the staple crops. So this way, even in PPP, even if you're comparing the same basket of goods, you might not get a realistic picture of the expenditure. Now in terms of PPP dollars, India is the 6th largest economy in the world. Again, false. India used to be the 4th largest economy. Now it is the 3rd largest economy in terms of purchasing power parity. Now, with reference to the cultivation of Kharif crops in India in the last 5 years, consider the following statements. Now, see again, in this particular question, I am not going to go under option statement 1, statement 2 at all, because if you consider statement 3 and 4, so if you just analyze these two statements, it is more than sufficient to get the answer. So see, if there is any option that is repeated in all the statements, that is, I think statement 3 is repeated and statement 4 is repeated, or even statement 2 is repeated everywhere. So if you are able to eliminate even one of these statements accurately, so if you eliminate statement 2, you are left with one option. If you eliminate statement 3, you are left with just one option. If you eliminate statement 4, you are left with just one option. So let us go through statement 3. Area of cotton cultivation is more than that of sugarcane. That is obviously true, because it is almost, I think, 2 to 3 times more. Sugarcane crop is around 50 lakh hectares roughly, and cotton production is from 122 lakh hectares, so around 2.5 times cotton and sugarcane. Okay. Then the fourth statement says ki area under sugarcane cultivation has steadily decreased. While that is not true, it has steadily increased. So recently itself, it said ki the area under sugarcane crop has increased by almost 4 lakh hectares. That is almost 9% in a single year. So basically, if you say, okay, statement number 4 is false, you are just left with one option. That is statement 1. You don't even need to go through the other options if you are sure about one option in such type of questions. Now, question number 84 is fairly straightforward. Among the agricultural commodities imported by India, which one of the following accounts for the highest imports in terms of value in the last 5 years? So that would be vegetable oils. So the important thing to note in this particular question is the terms highest imports in terms of value, not in terms of size or anything. So highest imports in terms of value. So coming to the next question, number 86, which one of the following is not the most likely measure the government or RBI takes to stop the slide of Indian rupee? So let us say the rupee is undergoing a slide. Again, this is very similar to the last question that we discussed, where I think the last question was talking about the exchange risk, which again we have discussed several times in our prelims paper. So this question again asks about the slide of Indian rupee. So again, I think this is a question which we had very much asked, curbing imports of non-essential goods and promoting exports. This is true, we can do that. Now, when it comes to option 2 and 3, it says encouraging Indian borrowers to issue rupee denominated masala bonds, and the third option is about ECB borrowing, external commercial borrowing. So, see, whenever the rupee is sliding, or let's say rupee is depreciating, basically you can say that there is less demand for rupee. So that is why it is depreciating. So in order to create the demand for rupee, whenever you're getting the money into the country, you're creating a demand for it. But let us say that you're following an expansionary monetary policy, you're infusing a lot more rupee into the market. At the same time, you're increasing your deficit, which will again create inflation. An expansionary monetary policy is going to flood the market with rupee when already the rupee has very low demand. So this is again going against the very question itself. So see, whenever the rupee is depreciating, the other thing RBI usually does is it injects dollars and sucks out the liquidity from the market. So sucking out liquidity is important to keep the sliding check. So even if you see from that particular aspects, whenever OMOs are carried out, when you're sucking out liquidity, the thing that is happening is you're reducing the amount of rupee available in the market. So if you just apply that particular concept to this question, to stop the slide of Indian rupee, which option would work? Then following an expansionary monetary policy, again, it is going against all of the other options. When it comes to masala bonds and ECB, the aspect that you need to consider is that they are creating demand for the rupee. So forex is coming into the country, that is very good for us. So whenever forex comes in, that is excellent. The Reserve Bank of India's recent directives relating to storage of payment system data, popularly known as the data dikkat, commands the payment system providers that, okay, here in statement 1, they shall ensure the entire data relating to payment system operated by them are stored in system in India only. Now see, with regard to this particular question, again it's an extremely factual question with regard to current affairs. Extremely factual question. Statement 1 is true. Statement 2, they shall be owned and operated by public sector companies. Of course, obviously you would not expect such an autonomy by PSBs over this, but that is false. Good. You could have guessed that. Statement 3 says they shall submit the consolidated system audit report to the CAG of India by the end of the calendar year, whereas they have to submit it to the RBI. So statement 3 is also false. The option is A1 only. Okay, coming to question 88, which of the following adopted a law on data protection and privacy for its citizens, known as General Data Protection Regulation, and started its implementation also. So if you know one particular country that takes its data protection and privacy laws seriously is the European Union. It was the pioneer in prosecuting companies such as Google. So, and Google tax has also come up from European Union itself. So, yeah, coming to question 89. Recently, India signed a deal known as Action Plan for Prioritization and Implementation of Cooperation Areas in the Nuclear Field with which of the following countries? Now, this was in Russia. This was with Russia in 2018. Very straightforward question indeed. Coming to question 90. 90 is a very interesting question. The money multiplier in economy increases with which one of the following? Now see, when you talk about the money multiplier or the money multiplier effect, let me just explain to you briefly what money multiplier effect is. It basically means money creates money. The money multiplier effect. How does money create money? Let us say RBI is 100 rupees. RBI will say, okay, 100 rupees is more than, of these 100 rupees, I don't need all of the 100 rupees. 10 rupees is more than sufficient. So RBI will keep 10 rupees. It will loan 90 rupees to State Bank of India. What State Bank of India is going to do? It is going to say 10 rupees is more than sufficient for me. I'm going to loan 80 rupees. So again, the rural banks that have gotten this money will say, okay, so much money is sufficient for us. We are going to loan the rest to people. So like this, 100 rupees has created another 90 rupees at the lower level. That has created another 80 rupees at the lower level. That has created some more money at the lower level. You go on adding this, 100 rupees will roughly be responsible for creating money worth 400 rupees or 500 rupees. That is why you call it the money multiplier effect. Money is getting multiplied at different stages. So let us analyze the options. Increase in cash reserve ratio. So if you are increasing the cash reserve ratio, what is going to happen? The amount of deposit that the banks have to keep with them increases, and the amount of money they have to lend with them will decrease. So you're not increasing the money supply, you're decreasing it. Let us analyze option C, increase in the SLR, statutory liquidity ratio. Again, if you're increasing the SLR, banks have to compensate for it by keeping more in reserves. So again, this is not going to increase the money in the economy. Now the third thing says increase in the banking habit of the population. Now this option is the most true and the most feasible, because if you increase the banking habit of the population, they are going to come deposit more money. If they deposit more money, then we can lend more money. Simple as that. Increase in the population of the country, there is the option D, is again there is nothing to substantiate it.
Press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from the Unique Academy. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned.